In 1993, a team of geologists used seismic equipment to scan beneath the Great Sphinx and detected massive hollow chambers that shouldn't exist. The Egyptian government immediately shut down the investigation. They were told the chambers were off limits and not ready to be revealed. That was 32 years ago. The chambers are still sealed. No one is allowed to investigate them. And the deeper you look into what they might have found, the more terrifying the implications become. In 2008, a Japanese research team using ground-penetrating radar confirmed the cavities under the Sphinx extend at least 30 feet below the structure. They detected what appeared to be rectangular corridors and spaces carved with precision that shouldn't be possible with Bronze Age tools. Egyptian authorities revoked their permits within 48 hours. The team was escorted out of the country and told never to return. In 2017, archaeologists using non-invasive scanning technology detected a massive void beneath the Sphinx's paws that appears to lead to a network of tunnels extending toward the Great Pyramid. The Egyptian Minister of Antiquities publicly denied the findings. Then he quietly resigned 3 months later without explanation. The lead researcher on the project refused to discuss his results and stopped publishing papers about the Sphinx entirely. Something is under the Sphinx that multiple governments have worked for decades to keep hidden. The seismic data exists. The radar scans exist. The chambers are real. But every attempt to explore them has been blocked by authorities who refuse to explain why. This is what we know about the voids beneath the Sphinx. Why the evidence suggests they're far older and more advanced than Egyptian civilization, and why the people who discover too much about them stop talking. Let me be clear about something right from the start. The hollow spaces beneath the Sphinx aren't conspiracy theory. They're documented scientific fact confirmed by multiple independent teams using different technologies over 30 years. In 1991, Boston University geologist Robert Schuck used seismography to study weathering patterns on the Sphinx. His team placed seismographs around the structure to measure how sound waves traveled through the limestone. Solid rock transmits sound waves at predictable speeds. Hollow spaces create anomalies. His equipment detected massive anomalies directly beneath the Sphinx's front paws and extending backward under the body. The cavities measured approximately 9 meters by 12 meters. That's roughly 30 feet by 40 feet. Not small voids from natural erosion. Large rectangular chambers carved deliberately. When Schuck presented his findings to the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities, they told him his permits would not be renewed. He was banned from conducting further research at the site. In 1993, a team led by seismologist Thomas Dobeke returned with more advanced equipment. They conducted extensive seismic refraction surveys using multiple readings from different angles to create a three-dimensional map of what's beneath the surface. They confirmed Schuck's findings and detected additional anomalies. Not just one chamber, multiple connected spaces forming what appeared to be a tunnel system. Dobeke's data showed the chambers weren't natural limestone caves. The walls were too regular. The spaces too geometrically precise. Natural caves are irregular and follow water flow patterns. These anomalies had right angles, flat floors, characteristics of deliberate excavation. When Dobeke tried to publish his full data set in peer-reviewed journals, the Egyptian government threatened legal action. His complete findings have never been released. In 2008, the Waseda University team from Japan brought ground-penetrating radar technology. Unlike seismography, which uses sound waves, GPR uses electromagnetic pulses to map underground structures. It's more precise. It can distinguish between rock types and identify voids with accuracy down to inches. They confirmed everything the previous teams found and detected something else. The chambers weren't empty. The radar signatures suggested the presence of objects inside the sealed spaces, dense objects that radar couldn't penetrate. The team interpreted this as possible stone structures or artifacts sealed within the chambers. They requested permission to excavate. Egyptian authorities not only denied permission, but revoked the team's permits for all future work in Egypt. The lead researcher, Dr. Sakuji Yoshimura, has never publicly discussed what the radar actually detected. But here's what makes this terrifying. Every team that confirms the chambers exists gets shut down. Every researcher who publishes findings about them faces consequences. The pattern is consistent and deliberate. Someone doesn't want these chambers explored, and they have enough power to shut down international research teams backed by major universities and governments. The Sphinx is officially dated to 2500 BC, built by the pharaoh Khafre during the 4th dynasty. That's the accepted historical timeline. But geological evidence suggests the Sphinx is at least twice that old, possibly much older. And if the Sphinx is older than Egyptian civilization, then whoever built the chambers beneath it wasn't Egyptian. Robert Schoch's weathering analysis is the key to this problem. Schoch wasn't studying the chambers initially. He was studying erosion patterns on the Sphinx's surface to determine its age. The Sphinx shows extensive vertical weathering patterns consistent with prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall. Deep channels carved by water running down the limestone body. Egypt has been an arid desert for 5,000 years. The Sphinx sits in one of the driest places on Earth. There hasn't been enough rainfall in the region to cause that level of water erosion since at least 7,000 BC. The last time the Giza Plateau received sustained heavy rainfall was during the African humid period, which ended around 5000 BC at the earliest. If water erosion carved those channels, that means it's at minimum 7,000 years old, potentially much older. This directly contradicts the official timeline that places its construction at 2500 BC, during a period when the region was already dry. When Schoch presented this evidence at the American Association for the Advancement of Science conference in 1992, Egyptologists attacked him viciously. Not with geological counter-evidence, but with appeals to historical authority. The Sphinx can't be older than 2500 BC because Egyptian history doesn't support it. That's not science. That's dogma. But here's why this matters for the chambers beneath the Sphinx. If the structure itself is 7,000 plus years old, then the chambers carved beneath it are equally old or older. We're not talking about Bronze Age Egyptians with copper tools. We're talking about a civilization that existed before recorded history, before writing, before the wheel. And they somehow carved large geometric chambers into bedrock with precision that rivals modern engineering. The technology required to excavate those chambers didn't exist in 5000 BC, according to every archaeology textbook. Bronze tools can barely scratch limestone. Copper tools are even worse. Yet someone carved rectangular chambers 30 feet underground with flat floors and right angles thousands of years before humans supposedly had the capability. There's another aspect of Schoch's geological analysis that Egyptologists really don't want to discuss. The erosion patterns aren't uniform across the Sphinx. The body shows deep vertical water erosion, but the head shows significantly less erosion and a completely different pattern. This suggests the head was recarved at a later date from an earlier. Any sculptor will tell you the proportions are wrong. The head is roughly 1/15 the body length. It should be 1/10 or larger for correct proportions. The head looks like it was carved from something bigger. The prevailing theory among researchers who've actually studied the erosion is that the original Sphinx had a lion's head proportional to its lion's body. At some point, probably around 2500 BC when Khafre was in power, Egyptian sculptors recarved the weathered lion's head into a pharaoh's head, Khafre's head. This would explain why the head shows less erosion and why the proportions are wrong. If this theory is correct, the Sphinx predates pharaonic Egypt by thousands of years. It was already ancient when the pyramids were built. The Egyptians didn't construct it. They found it, renovated it, and claimed it as their own. This is consistent with how civilizations throughout history have appropriated monuments from previous cultures. But it raises the question that terrifies historians. If the Sphinx was already standing in 7000 BC or earlier, who built it? What civilization existed before recorded history with the knowledge and technology to create a monument that massive and engineer chamber systems beneath it? The standard historical timeline says no such civilization existed. Humans in 7000 BC were supposedly hunter-gatherers who hadn't discovered agriculture yet. They definitely didn't carve massive underground chambers with geometric precision under enormous limestone monuments. Yet the geological evidence says someone did exactly that. The erosion doesn't lie. The seismic data doesn't lie. The chambers exist. The weathering is real. Either our entire understanding of human civilization is wrong, or there was an advanced culture we've completely lost from history. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography to search for hidden chambers inside the Great Pyramid. Muon tomography uses cosmic ray particles that penetrate rock to create 3D maps of internal structures. It's the same technology used to study volcanoes and find hidden nuclear material. The team was scanning the pyramid when they detected something unexpected. A void beneath the pyramid's foundation that appeared to connect to an external tunnel system. When they tracked the trajectory, it led directly toward the Sphinx, approximately 500 meters away. A separate team using ground-penetrating radar on the plateau between the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid detected what appeared to be a subsurface passageway. The passage ran in a straight line from the area beneath the Sphinx toward the pyramid. The radar signature suggested a rectangular tunnel approximately 6 feet high and 4 feet wide carved through bedrock at a depth of 25-30 feet. The teams requested permission to excavate a small test shaft to confirm the tunnel's existence. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities denied the request. When the researchers published preliminary findings suggesting a connected chamber system beneath the Giza Plateau, the ministry issued a statement calling the research unfounded speculation and threatening legal action against anyone who continued discussing it. But here's what the data actually shows. Multiple independent scans using different technologies detected the same subsurface anomaly connecting the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid. GPR doesn't hallucinate rectangular tunnels. Muon tomography doesn't invent underground passages. The tunnel exists. The implications are staggering. If the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid are connected by subsurface tunnels, it means the entire Giza complex was designed as a unified system. Not individual monuments built over decades by different pharaohs, but a planned architectural complex with integrated underground infrastructure. This contradicts everything we're told about how the pyramids were built. The official narrative is that each pyramid was a tomb constructed during a single pharaoh's reign, isolated projects. No master plan. But if tunnels connect them underground, someone planned the entire plateau as a single complex that requires centralized authority, long-term planning spanning generations, and engineering sophistication far beyond what Bronze Age Egyptians supposedly possessed. Here's the question no one in mainstream archaeology wants to answer. Why won't Egypt allow investigation of the chambers? If they're just empty voids or ancient storage rooms, there's no reason to keep them sealed for 30-plus years. If they contain artifacts from Khafre's reign, excavating them would support the official timeline and be a massive archaeological triumph. The fact that investigation is blocked suggests something else. Either the chambers contain evidence that contradicts the accepted timeline, or they contain something Egyptian authorities consider too dangerous or politically sensitive to reveal. There are 3 likely explanations, and none of them are comforting. First possibility is that the chambers contain evidence of a pre-Egyptian civilization, artifacts, technology, or construction techniques that prove an advanced culture existed before recorded history. This would invalidate decades of Egyptological scholarship and force a complete rewrite of human history. Academic reputations, university departments, and entire fields of study are invested in the current timeline. Evidence that destroys that timeline would create an institutional crisis. Second possibility is that the chambers contain religious or political artifacts that would destabilize modern Egypt. Egypt is an Islamic country, but its national identity and tourism economy depend heavily on pharaonic heritage. If the chambers contain evidence that fundamentally challenges Islamic historical narratives or suggests the Sphinx has non-Egyptian origins, it could create domestic political problems. Third possibility is that previous unauthorized explorations already occurred and found something that governments decided must remain secret. There are persistent rumors that Edgar Case's followers, who believed the Sphinx held a hall of records containing ancient knowledge, conducted secret excavations in the 1930s or 1940s. If they found something and reported it to authorities, and those authorities decided it couldn't be revealed, that would explain the decades of denial and obstruction. But here's what we know for certain. Multiple scientific teams using legitimate technology detected large hollow chambers under the Sphinx. Every attempt to investigate those chambers has been blocked. Researchers who push too hard get banned, discredited, or stop publishing. That pattern doesn't happen unless someone powerful wants the chambers to remain sealed. I'm going to be clear about speculation versus evidence. We don't know what's in the chambers because no one has been allowed to excavate them. Everything beyond the chambers exist and are sealed is educated guessing based on indirect evidence. But the radar signatures, seismic data, and erosion patterns let us make some reasonable inferences. The chambers are large, rectangular, and deliberately carved. They're not natural caves. They're engineered spaces. That means they were created for a purpose. Storage, ritual space, or something we can't imagine from our modern perspective. The chambers appear to contain dense objects that radar can't penetrate. This could mean stone structures, metal objects, or simply collapsed rubble from structural failure over thousands of years. We can't know without excavation. The chambers are connected by passages that may link to the Great Pyramid. This suggests they're part of a larger system, not isolated rooms. Ancient civilizations often built underground complexes for religious purposes, royal burials, or protection from invasion. The Giza chambers could serve any of those functions. The most terrifying possibility is that they're older than we can explain. If geological dating is correct, and the Sphinx is 7,000 plus years old, then the chambers beneath it were carved by people who aren't supposed to have existed yet. That opens questions that most historians aren't willing to confront. Was there an advanced prehistoric civilization that was lost to history? Did humans achieve technological sophistication much earlier than we think, only to collapse and reset? Are there cycles of civilization that rise and fall over tens of thousands of years, leaving only monuments that survive when everything else erodes away? Those questions sound like science fiction. But the geological evidence supporting an older Sphinx isn't fiction. The seismic data confirming chambers underneath isn't fiction. The decades of systematic obstruction preventing investigation isn't fiction. Those are documented facts, and facts that don't fit our historical narrative don't disappear just because we find them inconvenient. What makes the Sphinx situation more disturbing is that it's not unique. There are other sites around the world where evidence of advanced ancient engineering gets discovered and then investigation gets blocked. The pattern repeats. In 1995, researchers discovered massive megalithic structures 300 feet underwater off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan. The structures have right angles, straight edges, and stairways carved into rock. Geologists estimated they're at least 10,000 years old, created when sea levels were lower. Japanese authorities have restricted diving access and discouraged further research. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe was excavated in the 1990s and revealed a massive stone temple complex dated to 9,600 BC, 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and 7,000 years before the pyramids. The site proves that hunter-gatherers were capable of sophisticated architecture thousands of years earlier than historians believed possible. Only 5% of the site has been excavated. Turkish authorities have slowed excavation to a crawl despite international interest, In Bosnia, a controversial pyramid complex discovered in 2005 shows geometric structures beneath hills that some researchers claim are man-made pyramids older than any in Egypt. Mainstream archaeology has dismissed the site, but excavations have revealed tunnels, precisely cut stones, and construction techniques that don't match natural formations. Government support for research has been inconsistent and politicized. The pattern is always the same. Evidence of advanced ancient engineering appears. Initial research confirms anomalies that challenge historical timelines. Then investigation gets blocked, researchers get discredited, and mainstream academia insists the evidence doesn't mean what it appears to mean. You can choose to believe that's coincidence, that multiple sites on multiple continents just happen to show similar evidence of prehistoric sophistication and just happen to all face similar obstruction. Or you can consider that maybe, possibly, there's something about human prehistory that powerful institutions have decided the public shouldn't know. Let's say Egyptian authorities finally allow excavation of the Sphinx chambers. 3 scenarios are possible, and only one of them leaves our understanding of history intact. Scenario 1 is that the chambers are empty or contain unremarkable artifacts from ancient Egypt. The seismic data was real, but whatever was inside was removed centuries ago by tomb robbers or early archaeologists. This would be disappointing but wouldn't challenge anything fundamental about our historical narrative. Scenario 2 is that the chambers contain Egyptian artifacts dated to 2500 BC, confirming the official timeline. This would validate traditional Egyptology, but wouldn't explain the water erosion, the geological age evidence, or why authorities fought so hard to prevent investigation. If the chambers just contain normal Egyptian stuff, why the 30 years of obstruction? Scenario 3 is that the chambers contain something that doesn't fit. Technology or artifacts that predate ancient Egypt. Evidence of engineering capabilities that Bronze Age cultures shouldn't possess. Or worst-case scenario from an archaeological perspective, proof that an advanced civilization existed before recorded history and then disappeared completely except for monuments we can't explain. That third scenario is what terrifies academic historians. If evidence proves humans built sophisticated structures 7,000 or 10,000 years ago using advanced techniques, then everything we teach about the progression of civilization is wrong. Agriculture wasn't the beginning of complex society. Writing wasn't the beginning of knowledge transmission. The Bronze Age wasn't the beginning of advanced engineering. We'd have to accept that human civilization is far older than we thought. That knowledge and capability were achieved, then lost. That history is cyclical, rather than linear. That monuments like the Sphinx might be remnants of cultures so ancient we have no records of them except the structures they left behind. Most academics would rather believe the chambers stay sealed forever than confront evidence that invalidates their entire field. And that's probably why they're still sealed, because the truth might be more terrifying than any mystery could be. The truth might be that we don't actually know our own history. That what we call the beginning of civilization was actually a rebirth after an earlier collapse, and that the monuments we attribute to ancient Egypt are actually far older, built by people we've completely forgotten. The chambers beneath the Sphinx are real. The evidence is documented. The question isn't whether they exist. The question is what's inside them, who put it there, and why we're not allowed to find out.